And and we are live. My name is Rational Outlaw. Thank you for tuning in to RNN live. Now, why don't we introduce our guests again? So let's starting from the bottom. We have
Hello, my name is Neko Boy. I'm a music producer and semi-anime YouTuber.
all right. Next,
Uh, Demon Hobbit, notorious internet troll, and overall shitlord.
and then we have a new guest.
Hi, my name is Patsa, and I'm not a spy for North Korea.
And next we have C. That's your cue.
Yeah, I know. I'm just wondering, how do I put raging anti-Semite into a positive manner?
You could call yourself Black Lives Matter.
Anti-Semitic. The only problem is I'm not black. As much as my voice would suggest that.
Well, you could all
young, angry white kids.
well.
I'm not even a kid anymore. I'm 21 now. I feel fucking old.
Oh. Anyways, well, you could say the fact that you have Middle Eastern blood in you. So there you go.
Yeah.
Just because he took some Middle Eastern cock at one point doesn't mean he has Middle Eastern blood in him.
It's a different fluid.
Although, to be fair, when I did take a DNA test, I have a strangely high percentage of English blood. So now I'm just trying to track down which of my families is a fucking traitor. We don't like the English.
They gotta be a traitor, huh? Satisfied.
Well, I'm 60% German, and I don't want to track my heritage.
I'm Chinese and Irish. The fuck is that?
I'm Welsh and Jewish.
Oof.
That's why we don't get along.
And I'm Irish, Scottish, English, Welsh, Danish, and German.
Basically, we're all mutts.
Yes.
Boreda.
All right, let's get into this.
All right.
Capitalism is not efficient in dealing with very important matters. For example, public health. There it is.
Oh,
What we
gonna
needed
hate
for
this
public
already.
health wasn't
You have something to say?
Oh, God.
I hate this already.
I mean, I could start.
Oh,
I mean,
excuse me.
so far-
profitable to produce.
So
and
what's
to
this
stockpile.
jackass's
So we
solution?
didn't.
Communism?
What that means is profit had a higher priority in our society than public health.
No.
And that's unacceptable. That's not a human community, which ought to put
What?
health and safety of its people in the face of a threat to life itself as about the highest value you could put on anything. Capitalism wasn't efficient in securing public health. It was monumentally insufficient.
Yeah, but
So what
public health
is
doesn't
the
work in
lesson
general.
That this pandemic
Yeah, just look at the
of the
NHS and Britain.
coronavirus can teach us, if only we'll learn it.
Oh, the
That
coronavirus.
there
It has a
are all
99.7,
kinds of things,
99.97%
fundamental,
survival rate.
basic things in a society
Oh, yeah, that
like
one.
ours that need not be and should not be handled as private profit enterprise activities because it doesn't work out well for us. That's what we
All right.
learned just now.
Okay.
And I'm sensing that he's ordered two things. A, he either believes this, or B, he doesn't believe it, and he's trying to sell it to desperate people. Or C, he's just trying to get attention. He's not really providing a statistical reason to why it failed. I think that he kind of views production as a moral thing and not a practical thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's kind of this strange dilemma. A lot of people have perception that, like, let's say you support privatization of the healthcare. They assume that you don't care because you're not instantly going to government spending. You're not going to the government. You're not making it a human right. But the problem is that never succeeds into giving, like, people still suffer under every single kind of welfare program imaginable. It's not that we're arguing off of cruelty or anything like that nature. We're arguing off of practicality.
That or Z would just say, well, he's obviously a Jew.
I won't go that goddamn far.
So there's a lot to unpack here, but one of the first things is that like this is a general problem with communism. They ignore basic human behavior, like people need an incentive, and success is one of the biggest incentives.
Well, yeah, and under communism, you really have no incentive besides to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lenin ran
you
into
don't
this.
have opportunity for advancement, and you just it's a ridiculous system. And it's never been tried right. You know what? It's been tried over 100 years.
Ooh, and
It's
something
never
I'd like to
worked.
add to that.
Go ahead.
So there's a show called America Uncovered. It's by the same guy who does China Uncensored, and he was talking about Antifa, and they were actually a big part in communism taking over in Eastern Europe, and the ANCAP or ANCOMs, I mean, but
Which is a
no
contradiction.
surprise, quickly after the Stalin regime took over their work.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's-
really interesting.
Yeah, you
Go ahead.
gotta remember Mussolini was killed by communist partisans, but they were, of course they were aided by the Allies. But thankfully, communism kind of failed brutally hard, along with the rest of the economy.
Well, I mean, the origins of Antifa in 1930s Germany are communist resistance to the fascists. But
No. That's partially wrong. I know this history well enough because I tracked it
Okay.
completely down. So it started from 1919, so post World War I, with the German Communist Party, which was directly funded by Lenin.
okay, so it was
was,
before the 30s. I thought it started in the 30s. Okay, I was
No,
wrong.
it was with the German Communist Party, who act like modern day Antifa. I mean, one of the most iconic imagery you can find with the German Communist Party was when they took over Munich for some time, like, the autonomous zone, and it resulted in a few issues. The biggest issue was, they were like destroying statues of the Kaiser, but that one's a little bit more understandable as to why people would be angry against him. A man who completely ruined Germany and now lives in Norway in a wonderful mansion that's completely paid for by the German state. But, that's a little bit more understandable. But
I will
essentially,
defer to
Munich
you as
was
the
freed.
German.
Munich was freed by the Freikorps, and the Freikorps was what is it called? Not demilitarized, deactivated. Yeah, deactivated soldiers. Because part of the armistice was a huge removal of the German army, like a limitation from millions to only 100,000 soldiers. So you got all these soldiers and all this extra equipment. So the Freikorps formed. Soldiers still being soldiers, and they essentially liberated the city. And Hitler came to them with the promise of work and so on. And they actually got a pretty good image, and they would later on be known as the Brown Shirts, or the SA. The
and then they
predecessor to
killed
the
all the
SS.
Hitler is a socialist. So there was kind of this illusion that he created himself to be kind of a centrist, and people kind of argue that he is. I don't think so. The thing was Hitler, he covertly did everything in the shadows, which was very authoritarian, and it was a very socialist country because all of the economy of Germany was being embezzled so they could go fund their war efforts. For instance, the Volkswagen there was bonds that people had, and they would pay the the bonds to go get a Volkswagen. Well, Hitler didn't give a whole lot of people Volkswagens. He built Panzers with the funds instead. He wanted to let people set their own prices, and most economic decisions made by anybody was made on the behalf of the German state.
But
And he essentially
they had free health care.
Yeah, even more of a reason why he was a socialist. But another thing is, a lot of people try to argue Antifa are good guys because their name is anti-fascist. Which, if that's the case, if we judge people solely on the basis of their name, then North Korea would be perfect.
Oh,
It's not just North Korea; it's also East Germany and a lot. What are those? So we have the German Democratic Republic, DDR. So East Germany. We have what was North Korea again?
It's the People's Republic. Or
No. With
Democratic
China,
People's Republic of Korea.
Wait. No, with China, it's the People's Republic of China. With North Korea, I think it's the Democratic People's Republic.
Yeah, it's the DPRK.
It had democratic in the name, as I remember.
Yes. Even though it's not at all.
Yeah. I mean, they still have a vote every 4 years.
Yeah, it's just you can only vote for one person, and if you don't vote, you're dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, the funny thing is, so the funny thing is,
or you'll get yeet.
But the funny thing is, a lot of people are trying to revisionize, saying that we're just trying to make socialism democratic by removing authoritarianism. Well, apparently most of these socialist governments in the past were democratic. They said the same thing.
They always say the same thing. That's what these idiots don't know. They've never read a history book.
Anyways, why don't we continue on another one of his videos?
Okay, yes, skip this idiot.
Oops.
The minimum wage. I want to look now at the minimum wage. That sad situation in which a capitalist system pays people at the bottom so little that after generations of struggle, we passed, in the depths of the Depression, a law mandating a minimum wage at the federal level. It's a law that says you can't pay people less than a certain amount. It's just
unless they're a bartender or a
indecent.
server.
It's like forbidding capitalists to employ children, or forbidding capitalists to impose themselves sexually on their workers, etc. The minimum wage. Well, let's look at it. It's a kind of measure of decency in a system. The current minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That's what it's been since 2009. It hasn't been raised. Again, in over a decade, it hasn't been raised. Over that time, prices went up every year. 1%, 2%, 3%. Not a terrible inflation, but you add it up over 10 years, a lot the prices have gone up. But the minimum wage hasn't gone up with them, which means in terms of what the minimum wage can buy, the last 10 years have seen a steady year-by-year decline in what the minimum wage will do for the people, the millions, who depend on it. What kind of a society does that?
All right, can we stop it right there?
Society during which the rich...
Oh my God, this guy...
Okay, so this guy kind of has a perception that a lot of people have, that one state makes up the entire country. Like in California, they have a much higher minimum wage, and it varies different depending on your state.
Mm-hmm.
And
I believe in Washington State, it is now $15.
Yeah.
I think no, that's only in Seattle. For the state, it's $13, I think.
Still,
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a very fun fact. One of the first people that introduced the minimum wage, I believe it was Jeff Bezos, and he went under pressure under Congress. And to make a long story short, to appease the pressure, he started paying his minimum wage workers $50 an hour. Now, the thing is, this doesn't affect Jeff Bezos because he has a bunch of machines that can minimize the cost, and he isn't losing a whole lot of money. However, his competitors who were competing with Jeff Bezos lost a lot of money, and this generally was hurting them and not him. And so this was a play to go hurt his competitors and not him.
Yeah, large companies large companies can afford taking an increased minimum wage, but medium-sized corporations or small businesses, they can't easily adjust to it.
Yeah.
All right, just hurry up and let this jackass finish so we can move on to the next awful thing.
Got richer, and the minimum wage was allowed to go down. You know when the minimum wage was the highest?
Wait, the minimum wage went
in terms
down?
of what it could afford a person earning it? 1968. I did a calculation. Using today's prices, what would the minimum wage have to have been in 1968 if it could buy what $7.25 can buy today? Because that's what the minimum wage is. It would have had to have been $12 an hour, which it wasn't. Wow. We have really shafted the people at the bottom. And that's an achievement of the capitalist system, even with a minimum wage, when you can see how the establishment, having been forced by struggle to create a minimum wage, undermines, eviscerates it in the years afterwards, taking back what they once had been forced to give.
Except the whole thing is that this kind of person, people like this guy, because he's supposed to be an economist. He's a really bad economist because he doesn't know shit.
Hate him. Good.
Anyways, my point is that his minimum wage has been shown to hurt businesses time and time and time again. If he was a good economist, or at least a halfway decent one, he would know this.
This
Okay,
MFR is about as good an economist as AOC.
Yeah, basically.
And minimum wage has been, a great motivator to accelerate automation. Like a lot of fast food chains, like especially in states with higher minimum wage, have kiosks now to take orders.
Yeah, as I said, the businesses like McDonald's and stuff like that, where they can afford to make robots and everything, and that lowers their costs. Once you increase it to a certain point, they can easily avoid the cost of having to pay people more. But small businesses can't, and then they have to cut the hours of employees or reduce the number of employees, some of them, to even maybe try to stay afloat, which makes it that the people actually end up making less money than they did before the increase of a minimum wage.
And therefore, it indirectly ends up helping the corporations more because it takes out their small business competitors.
Yes.
The last place I was a manager at, we were not allowed to schedule, like, according to our director, as a manager making the schedule, you could not schedule people more than 30 hours because they couldn't even get close to overtime. Like, that was just like, no, we're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, their wages went up. So it was like, okay, well, this person was working 40 hours a week, cut it to 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that is actual corporate policies. I will not name the companies because non-disclosure agreements, etc.
But my whole point is that even like small businesses, as you were saying, would also have to cut hours too, and for them it hurts, as I was saying, more, in which every sector of the field of the economy, every kind of business is going to have to make cuts and increases in the cost of their products or service, which just hurts everyone. It hurts the business, it hurts the consumer, and it hurts the person employed by the business.
Exactly. And these were big corporate companies, and that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it hurts everyone. The only people it helps is ironically the people they're trying to fight against, which is large corporations.
Yeah.
Well, the really funny thing is a lot of people just kind of assume that their politicians that they hire are just going to level the playing field. Often governments and corporations work together to go fuck over the normal person because they want to keep in power. So their policies are geared towards their competitors and not them. And thus they can keep their oligarchies alive essentially forever as long as the government's in their back pocket.
And ironic.
It's not like,
Go on.
yeah. So it's not only with that. Another sign of their friendship is, especially to their biggest taxpayers, the government gives them billions of dollars in government contracts. Like, for instance, George Bush, he did cut taxes. He cut taxes to a few corporations, and that's about it. Megalo corporations, and that's about it. And so they always work together to benefit each other, and they don't benefit the common man.
They also destroyed a couple of countries in the process, but
yeah, that's a 6-hour conversation, possibly for another day.
I mean, that's I'm like, what did Obama and like Hillary and Biden accomplish? Oh, they destroyed Libya, and now we have slave markets. Well, yay! Congratulations, you suck.
And what was that, Val? What was that dictator that you said you kind of liked? That was I think in Africa.
Gaddafi.
Sure.
Gaddafi.
Oh,
Tell about him again.
Basically, he warned the Europeans that if you get rid of, essentially, he said that we can't apply our Western standards to him because he doesn't understand, because we don't understand how Africa works. And then when we threatened to bomb his country, which we did under Barack Obama, he said that Europe will be flooded with Africans, and that's exactly where we are now. So I guess he warned us.
Like,
well,
Because essentially,
to be fair, Gaddafi was a piece of shit, but
yeah, he was.
He I mean, it's like Saddam Hussein in Iraq. You remove the strongman dictator of a country that doesn't want you there, and then it turns into just a broiling pile of nonsense.
When there's a power vacuum.
Yeah, and so, like, is it our business to go there and be the world police and kill a whole bunch of people and just be like, oh, well, okay, job done, and then just leave?
60 years of that policy tells me no.
Could you continue what you were going to say, Val?
Just basically, killing Islamic extremists and dealing with his own issue. And he is arguably the only person in history that I found who has made socialism work through capitalism. And I know that sounds stupid, but he actually made it work by essentially he ran an oil business, and part of the oil business profits were put into socialism, so it was out of his own pocket. So technically capitalism saved Libya's socialism, and it did result in a high literacy rate, all things which are missing now. A functional what is it called, the transportation of water, because Libya has a huge desert, but they introduced irrigation. He introduced this whole big irrigation system which helped bring water to poor people who could barely afford it, which of course us as Europeans were the first thing to target and destroy for no real reason.
So the country that actually has the most influence in Africa right now, it's not actually China. It's French. The most dominantly spoken language in Africa is not an African language, it's French.
Well, of course, French is fucking easier to learn than Mandarin.
Well, the reason is because France still holds most, essentially has a lot of power still over in Africa. There's an economic circle, and about 50% of the wealth goes to France in general. And essentially, when Gaddafi fell, the main military that was there was not the United States, it was France. And
all you got to do is threaten the French; they'll surrender.
Well, the thing is,
that's not true.
They are a nuclear power that has more nukes than China.
Oh, yeah.
I know that they kind of seem kind of weak, but in Africa, they know what the hell they're doing.
No,
matter of fact,
do.
yeah. a matter of fact, the really funny thing is they're the only ones who really are challenging China's influence in Africa. And they spend a lot of their money and everything, essentially neo-imperialism, to help keep their cash cow. Although they're losing money from spending so much money on the continent, they are gaining a lot of raw resources in return. If It's really strange. I don't think that the European powers necessarily, who are still semi-relevant, aren't Germany nor Britain. It's France on a geopolitical scale.
Well, I mean, the UK is busy dealing with their own internal crap right now. France pretty much got it handled. The Germans, they do not know what is going on. They are all over the place. Frau Merkel tells them what to do.
Okay,
And,
so just to look at the chat just really quickly. So Gray says, how does one make any money as a bad economist? Well, here's one idea: just scamming people.
I mean, yeah. I mean, charlatans are surprisingly profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what I think. Crazy conspiracy theory. He knows it's shit, and he's just selling it to desperate socialists.
Mm.
Because he's making more money selling his knowledge to socialists rather than capitalists.
That is another possibility.
Yeah.
So he's making money by pimping socialism. Conundrum? I don't know. I'm smelling a rat, and it's not coming from my attic.
I think
All right.
it's socialism for thee, not for me.
Yep.
Well, it's like Bernie Sanders. I have 3 full houses, but one's just like a lake house, and everybody has that.
And once he
He is
became
a
a
millionaire.
millionaire, he stopped complaining about millionaires and would only say billionaire.
Billionaires, yep. Or
You know that they're starting to add zillionaires into every conversation.
My name's Barack Obama, and I just want to say that I respect the common man, even though I'm gonna go ahead and take away your rights, and I'm gonna maybe destroy a country or two, and make millions of dollars.
And gives ISIS some weapons.
And wins the Nobel Peace Prize.
ISIS is just a JV team.
Yeah, win a Nobel Peace Prize for doing absolutely nothing.
Well, it's like that woman that won a Pulitzer Prize for the 1619 Project from the New York Times when it's complete horse shit.
Well, at least she did something. Barack Obama literally did nothing, and he got the Nobel Prize.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
at least she wrote a book.
Well, Obama has taken more vacations than any other president.
Oh, they always like to talk about Trump golfing. You know how much Obama went golfing?
There probably wasn't a week when he did.
Jesus. And who knows what Biden was doing? He was swimming naked in front of his Secret Service detail, trying to hit on them,
Smelling their hair.
sniffing their hair.
All right, let's play this
the
next
thing-
one.
Okay, continue. We're derailing
what Bloomberg
this.
did, very smart, was to ask the question. The big Trump tax cut of December 2017 was promised to kickstart the economy, to boost the economy, and to lead, above all, to many jobs. And particularly in the banking sector, since the banks were major beneficiaries of that tax cut. And here's what Bloomberg, no radical Bloomberg, no critic of capitalism Bloomberg, here's what their conclusion was, as you can see from the Bloomberg News Service story of January 16th. Total employment in banks in the United States shrank between December 2017 and today. All the promises of more jobs, false. Reality, fewer jobs. What did the banks do with their increased profits? By the way, the big banks, the 6 huge banks that are dominant in the United States, got more profits in the last 2 years, 2018 and 2019 than they had ever seen before. The tax cut was an enormous benefit to their bottom line, increasing dividends, increasing their liquid cash, increasing the value of their stocks, you name it. But they didn't hire more people, they reduced their payroll.
Yes, and who
They
runs
took
the banks?
profits,
God,
boosted their own
Someone
stock
had
by
to say it.
buying it back
Don't.
from
Not
the
me,
stock market,
unfortunately.
pushing up the price, and by by dividends
See?
to their
Behave.
shareholders and big pay packages.
I will follow the
to
words
their
of my
top
grandfather.
Don't be fooled. The arguments that politicians make as to why they have to do something that benefits the rich are never explained to us as being done to benefit the rich. Just like they're never being explained to us as an act to benefit the rich in exchange for donations from the rich to the same politicians. Instead, we are told.
Except, isn't it ironically that I think a lot of the wealthiest people are actually champagne socialists or regulationists?
I bet you this guy's a millionaire.
First thing I wanted to say was I wish he had more citations because it makes it a lot harder to prove him wrong. I have to dig up his argument, and then I have to
it's like it. He doesn't have any facts, evidence, reason, logic. Like
he brought up a title. That's it.
Oh, yep, he has a book called Understanding Socialism.
Okay, did he write it?
Is it for free?
Was the book manufactured with slave labor?
That's
Oh,
actually
was it made?
If you have
in
to pay
China?
for if you have to pay for this book, this guy's going to be instantly discredited.
Yep, it costs $30.
Citations. Yeah, great. They don't.
Could we check out his ancestry?
Oh.
Because at the moment, this is all lining up on my map.
Oh God! Hey, Z, don't you
And my,
do it.
and my map
Don't-
currently isn't aiming at
don't.
Poland.
You know,
look at
socialism is probably the best thing that's ever happened to this guy.
The funny thing is, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life is half the price of his book.
Did I mention that Ben Shapiro's wife is a doctor?
You're not helping your argument, but you're helping mine.
I wonder, is this guy's wife a doctor?
Oh God! Oh no!
Well, it can either be a
We
doctor
cannot-
or a lawyer.
We cannot go down this path. Stop it!
Don't worry, we got a Jew with us, so we're good.
We know it's all in jest.
Yeah, we do. Other people don't.
Hey,
I don't know.
I'll
We
say it
know
like
it's
this:
just
I got
jokes.
Jewish ancestry in me.
See,
I
there
don't
we
remember
go.
you saying that.
I've told you this multiple times.
But
My
I don't.
family's the line comes from Spain. They were Jews during the Spanish Inquisition. A little bit of a bad time.
I bet you've got a lot of things up in you.
Oh, shut up.
Oh, yes, he
You know, I
does.
wasn't expecting you to bring that up.
You know, this is the stuff that's gonna get your stream cancelled. Not any of my comments, all of his comments.
I told you I was going to ruin it.
Well, he did warn us.
He is a demon.
It's what I do.
No, he's Florida man, he's not a demon.
What's the difference?
You will refer
One
to me as
exists.
his infernal shortness, okay?
This guy kind of looks like a slightly more overweight Bernie Sanders.
He
Slightly
does.
more toned hair.
I don't know. Look at his mouth. Those are. Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Demons,
All right.
do not
Someone's
stick
bit
anything in his
lonely.
mouth.
He's a bit lonely.
Let's continue.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we're done with this video. We have one more from him.
Oh,
Oh, come
God.
on.
God, the same
What
guy.
did you and 3 videos from the same
And
person?
let me quote.
Actually,
Can
it's
we
4
move on to
videos.
the next person?
So this is the 4th video.
I missed a video?
You might have
I
combined
I think,
two.
I think the
then in
videos
your
are
mind.
so small they're kind of just forming together.
Mm.
Well, it's kind
Anyways.
of the attention span of a socialist, so, you know.
Let me
I
quote Donald Trump.
hate him.
When he was asked why he wanted workers to go back to work in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, he said, well, you know, it's a trade-off. Some people will get sick and die. We don't stop automobile traffic, Mr. Trump said, because a lot of people get killed in accidents.
Exactly.
Put aside the grotesque immorality of such a remark.
Sorry.
But let's
Greg.
look at it for a moment because it teaches us something.
Most people will watch it
Mr.
later.
Trump is right. We don't, as a society, question or stop or limit the private automobile, even though it is the largest polluter in our society.
Oh,
air pollution.
jeez.
And the
It
most
wastes
useful.
and burns fossil fuels way more than any other single industry. It kills more people than virtually anything else, and it
I-
ruins.
Wait,
Can we
virtually.
stop the video?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely
that-
false. I can tell that right away. For 2
Yeah.
things. 2 things that kill more people. 1, cancer, and the second is obesity.
Well, I was gonna say pizza, but you were close enough.
the
Hence
thing is-
obesity, diabetes.
Well, even if the entire Western world went about and extremely adopt the Green Deal and we cut as much carbon emissions as possible, China's still producing most carbon emissions. China isn't going to stop.
Well, China
neither
and
is
India.
Russia. Yeah. Not only that, Russia, they're not going to stop their production of oil. Neither is the Saudis family. A lot of the world's still dependent on oil, and they're not just going to give that up. If we try to crash their economy using this Green Deal, they're going to go to war with us. What other option would they have?
My whole thing
Especially-
is if these people are truly environmentalists, which none of them are, they would argue for more nuclear power and more experimentation with nuclear power and other forms of avenues that aren't the solar panel or wind power, which on most countries don't work very well.
Because
There
the
are some
nuclear-
countries that can make those 2 things work for them. I think it was it Denmark? I think it was Denmark that made wind and solar very useful for them. But most countries can't do that.
Well,
Yeah,
Well,
here's,
it's not no- Go ahead.
here's another thing. What do wind turbines require? Oh yeah, petroleum. And what else do they do? They wreck birds like little freaking blenders.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's our bird
Solar
storage.
power.
Well, they
Solar
are really
power.
little blenders for the number of birds.
And then there's the solar panels, which if a bird flies over them, they go burst into flames.
Well, that
Okay, that's a
and
little
what
bit of
you-
an exaggeration, but
No, it's actually not. Apparently, because there's these solar towers, I think in parts of the United States, and when birds fly up above them, they just burst into flames and die, and they fall in.
Yeah, nuclear
Well,
energy
me,
just
I don't care, but I'm an asshole.
I'm gonna have to search for this.
What were you gonna
Okay,
say, Neko?
Oh, I was just gonna say, just nuclear power across the board is so much safer, and part of the problem is people overhyping the disasters when, on a regular basis, mining for coal and for oil kills people
Mhm.
every freaking year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That and the systems have left a bad impression. That
And
and
there-
Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
And if we were to also invest in, there's also safer forms if we were to invest, although we don't have the technology yet, but we could make it, is a thorium reactor. Theoretically, we can make thorium reactors, which would be even safer than using uranium, which would be...
Going back to the public transportation thing, this is one of the many examples of why socialism is just full of human social engineering. Because now, personally, I don't mind public transportation, but what I hate is how he wants to impose it on people. People should have a freaking choice. So, like, for example, sometimes I'll take the train because it's cheaper than a plane ticket, or I'll take the bus because I don't have to pay for parking downtown. And that's the beauty of it, is choice. You don't have to force people to take the bus.
Well, on my end, I have to take the bus for school because by the end, if I keep driving my car, it's going to cost me more.
Well,
And
and
to
that's
be
another
fair,
good
German
point.
buses are quite nice. The only problem is other people.
Yeah, because
Volkswagen.
another reason a lot of people may not want a car is because they have to pay for car insurance, have to pay for oil and upkeep, and some people don't want to deal with that. I don't blame them.
Don't tell me I got no savings. That all went into my car. It's like a brutal fucking divorce.
Well, and a few other things.
What do you mean a few other things?
A few other things before that.
Oh my god.
Are you
That's
talking about my Terminator collectible figure?
What's that you doing there, demon?
Cut.
It's,
Cut. Stop.
But yeah, as I was saying about nuclear energy, like there's so much we can do with nuclear energy, and so much we can invest into that in the technology to improve the technology. As I was saying, like thorium reactors. Although we don't have any thorium reactors, there's none built, but there is the possibility that we can build, invest, trying to create a thorium reactor, trying to figure out how that works exactly. And that could be even better than the uranium, more efficient, even cheaper, and even more clean than a uranium reactor, which we already have. So there's ways to even make it even better and safer than what the nuclear reactors we have now, which are already quite safe. But we can make it even better, yet no one wants to invest in this because they're all so afraid of nuclear power, no matter what kind
I
it may
mean,
be.
let's face
No,
it, by
not
the end of the
every-
day, the only
not
real
every
nation to have had nuclear power problems is, well, Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The United
earthquake.
No. Let me just explain. So with the United States, you had the 3 Miles Island incident, where basically a valve misfunctioned, so it was trapped open and it just spilled radioactive material out. But that was actually cleaned up. Then Fukushima, well, that wasn't really a failure in reactor, more like a failure of fucking planning, because who the hell thinks we're gonna put a nuclear reactor in an earthquake-prone area? Was a smart idea, was retarded to begin with. But the reactor itself worked. Now, Russia, on the other hand, if I make a quick search on Russian nuclear sub-incidents and look at how many of them had nuclear reactor problems, and that's not counting the
Or
most
sunk
famous...
to the bottom of the ocean.
And that's not counting Chernobyl, you know, the most iconic problem from the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
just
this
like, and just
But
like communist
communism
China and the
totally works,
coronavirus,
bro.
they try to hide their disasters, which end up killing way more people than it could have.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is partially why I don't like globalization. If one government screws up, then we're all gonna feel the pain of it.
Yeah, like the best example for a country that's handled nuclear power very well would be France. France has
Yes.
quite a few nuclear reactors, and they haven't had any problems whatsoever.
And they've
Oh,
actually
France
found a way to
has-
re-refine nuclear waste into usable uranium, thus using it again.
Yeah, France hasn't had an issue. The UK hasn't had an issue. I don't think, like Germany, I don't think they have nukes.
And we have a few nuclear reactors,
No,
and we haven't
we
had an
used to
issue.
have a few nuclear reactors, but then Merkel has been starting to shut them down. And ever since that day, the electric trains, have stopped running as well as before. Because
The UK. Oh, sorry. The UK did have some problems with the Sellafield reactor, but that's it. Same
The
with
only
America.
thing I
like,
will
only
ever
one disaster.
remember, the only thing I will ever remember when it comes to the nuclear reactors is that one fucking sign, which is nuclear reactor, and then in the same direction a sign, spider farm. you're gonna have a fucking disaster at some point, and everyone will regret it in Europe. And as for the French, not really that many nuclear disasters in France, but maybe look away from the Philippines and various French-owned islands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did
Well, if
cause
the
a
French
few
were
issues.
if the French were going to have a disaster, they'd just surrender.
No, they won't. I keep saying that. The French army has been one of the strongest in history. French management of the army has been rather goddamn disasterful.
Sort of like how the handling of the U.S. military has been recently.
Kind of.
Well, it's because you get to become a 3 or 4-star general. That's a political position. That's not. It has nothing to do with your.
Well, not even just the
soldiering
generals, the
skills.
politicians getting involved into the whole.
Yeah,
That's been our problem since Vietnam. I mean, that's 50 years now, over 50 years.
yeah, but
that
it's
been
slowly
going on.
increasing. I mean, if I need to give you a good example, which is the French, prior to World War II, the government nationalized certain industries, which heavily affected the French military for obvious reasons. But the most notable issue was with the French Air Force, where, if I remember correctly, 37% of all aircraft that the French Air Force had were prototypes. And a good portion, like 15%, no wait, by the end of 15%, all prototypes, or something like that, a high percentage of the 37% were prototypes that literally could not fly, like at all. And it turns out because French politicians in charge with the Air Force essentially commissioned exclusively this one guy to build them planes, and he just built them planes even if they didn't fly, and the French Air Force bought it. So the politician got happy and the politician's friend got rich.
Mm.
And what happened when the Germans came around? Well, the French didn't have a fucking Air Force. I mean, they did have a few planes, but when a third of your Air Force is experimental aircraft that you don't know if it's going to work.
F-35.
Well, not only was that, there was a lot of inconfidence with the French army. Like when they went around the force of Verdun, they were getting reports from scouts that the Germans were on their way, and the German officer dismissed it, saying it wasn't possible. And then and then they knew how big it was. Like the Blitzkrieg went all the way back to essentially Berlin. It was how massive the fort was coming, and they know that it was all coming. They didn't act appropriate, and they got flanked for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you gotta remember, when it came to World War II, it was old way thinking, because the British and the French thought it was going to be another World War I, because that's the majority of what their vehicle designs were based on, especially the tanks. And the key thing was that the basic plan, if you look at it from a World War I perspective, it's fairly genius. You got the Ardennes, which is considered impossible for vehicles at the era to cross through. Then in the north, which the Germans previously tried to go through with the Schlieffen plan, you got the best French troops over there, and of course the best British. And for the rest, you're backing up the Maginot Line, which was the most sophisticated bunker ever built. And still, to this very point in time, I still think it is the most sophisticated bunker ever built. But anyways, so of course they didn't consider anything could happen with the Ardennes, so they left that big gap open, and they completely forgot that Rommel existed. Because the biggest issue with Rommel is that he was known for going too far and essentially just losing control, losing all connection with command, but that worked to his complete advantage of just causing chaos for everyone. So of course, what happened with... I mean, he did warn about where the British were going to land because, British ran counterintelligence for Normandy. So the official story was they were going to land in Calais, but he knew it was going to be in Normandy because of the rough terrain, because that's what they did in North Africa. But anyways.
Yeah, but they made him kill himself, so.
Well, he did try to kill Hitler.
All right, so let's finish this video.
No, let's ignore it. This was more interesting.
and it fills our junkyards. Wow. Why do we do this? The answer is private profit. The private profit
Like your
of
book
the
sales.
automobile industry that has dominated the American economy for the last century.
Get the fuck out
Without
there.
the private automobile, we wouldn't have developed the suburb in this country, which depends on
Yes, because the Soviet Union was so
would
wonderful.
have
If you could
had,
scrap
in
enough money to buy a car, wait 10 years to get one.
Remember, the plumber's coming in the
a
morning.
mass
I-
Oh, I know what you're referring to, Ronald Reagan.
transit
I don't think I
system
can take this
worthy
guy.
of the name. Some of you have been to other countries that have good quality mass transit, and you know what that can mean. If we wanted to move people, we would have on the edge of every city what we already have. We now call it a rent-a-car place, but it would then become a public utility,
What?
like a public park. You go into the
Ah,
public
yes, because
park
public
with a blanket.
bicycles worked out so well.
Mm.
It's totally not like they keep getting stolen and scrapped for parts.
But isn't that rent-a-car thing private as well?
Yes, but he's calling for a public version of it.
That no, please.
And some food when you want to have a picnic with your family. And you go to the parking lot on the edge of your community to pick up a car when you need one. And it's maintained by expert mechanics. It's owned by the community.
Yes,
It's a
and
public
why would they
resource.
work as an
It's
expert?
not a source of private profit. We do
Who
kill
pays
large
the
numbers
expert
of our fellow
mechanic?
citizens in our
Yeah, that's what I was
automobiles
about to say.
because
Why
we
would he
don't
work for
have
free?
a public mass transit system. Imagine one. Beautifully appointed trains. You get them in other countries too. Beautifully appointed buses, jitneys, taxis, rent-a-cars.
Fun
It's
fact, the most
all
polluting
easy
force
to
on this
do,
planet is a
much
train.
less polluting.
One of the
much
most polluting forces
less
on this planet is
unsafe.
a train.
Oh, and there's his book.
Oh,
Understanding Socialism.
He pushes it in every video.
hate him.
You said that to
Please,
essentially
God.
every person that we watched 2+ videos of.
But I'm not going to do it again. Okay, please tell me you've got another jackass to watch.
Yeah, I got it. Why don't you guys talk while I get it ready?
Okay,
All right. I noticed that. Yeah, I noticed was him. He talks a lot about collectivization, everything essentially being owned by the state, and everything being provided by the state. He does. So they live in this sort of. I don't know if he's arguing for massive taxation or communism. I don't know what, but generally socialists rely on capitalism more than an average capitalism would, because they believe that they can do things that generally capitalism has failed to do, and that's to make socialist, this kind of quasi-socialist thing work. Is that these millionaires who are 1% of the population and can't afford most of the shit that they oppose, like for instance, the 1% is a very fragile class. More people enter it and leave it very much, and there's only a few billionaires and maybe a couple few thousand millionaires. Not sure on that one, but it's not a massive collection of wealth as they're making it out to be. And they can't realistically afford this shit that they're proposing. It's unrealistic. And a lot of modern socialism, or just a lot of our policies in general, the economic system's like a divorce case. Daddy fucked up because he had a lot of money, and I get half of his shit, no questions asked. But Daddy needs the right to own his production, or just we don't get any money. And so that's kind of the way it works out.
And that is why I explain my car as a brutal divorce, because now I'm paying alimony.
And
All right,
thinking
are we
about,
ready for the next
private-
video?
Oh, I had one more thing. Going back to another thing that kind of helps like reduce private ownership is Uber, because why buy a car when you can just have someone drive you, and again, don't have to pay for the upkeep of the car.
Ah, yes. Uber. taxis with just slightly more rape. If you get that reference, I pity you.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Rapid.
When protests are framed as
Video.
violent, it gives people who may have had no interest in the issue being protested in the first place an excuse to discuss the morality of the protesters, to deem them bad actors unwilling to negotiate in good faith. This fails to recognize that so-called violent actions are rarely the first choice. They are the result of being unheard for too long. They are dangerous. They are illegal and can provoke more than arrest. but
I will
nonviolent
say
protests
something if
do
we
the
can
same.
pause this video of retardation. There was a youth movement in Nazi Germany which didn't like the government for obvious reasons, and you could argue as the first version of the protest generation. You know, that would be the 60s. And essentially, they knew that the Nazi government would not kill them because they're children, or, you know, they were teenagers. But they essentially staged peaceful protests. And if you're able to even curb the fucking Nazi government with all the secret police to not kill you or even commit police brutality, then you can definitely do it in the fucking United States.
Mm-hmm.
The state will crack down swiftly with their own retributive violence, and the state has a larger arsenal. This type of action carries grave consequences.
Yeah, I wonder what
and
could
is
have
not
evened the
taken
playing fields. It's totally not like in the US you have a method to even the playing fields.
Well, people in the country do, not so much the city. Hey, we warned you, this is what happens when you took away all the guns and gave it to the police.
I'm
It is
just
a
like
sign.
this whole narrative. But let me just throw in my 2 cents real quick. That the police are out hunting and killing black people. You know, you are 90% more likely to get killed by black on white violence, and you're way more likely to get killed by a cop if you're white. You know who has the least number of deaths by cop? Asians. Riddle me that, Batman. And so, like, these people out there complaining, they're making crap up. You know how many hoax hate crimes I see in a given week? It happens all the effing time. It's not real.
You gotta calm down a bit, because you gotta remember these are the genuine retards, and I don't care how offensive that phrase is. Mainly because you gotta remember that they use this argument that blacks are hunting down blacks are hunting down police, but that's a different story. No, that the stupid argument of that police are hunting down black people, they try to use it in London as well, which then really pissed off the English people over there. Mainly down to the basic fact that in all of 2019, there was only one black person in fucking London killed by black people. I mean, by the police. Multiple people are killed by black people, but once again, that's a different story. Can you guess who was the only person killed by the police who was black?
The terrorist.
Yes.
The bridge terrorist was knife.
Yes. Literally the only black victim of police.
There was 9 in the U.S. And guess what they all did? They all assaulted an officer or someone else. They were unarmed. Yeah. Oh, they just had a knife. They were unarmed with a knife. Oh, what? Shut up.
Also, before
motorcycle accident in Florida. That's COVID.
So even in Nazi Germany, when they covertly did a lot of their authoritarianism, their oppression of the Jews was still pretty wide out in the open. They had several race riots. They clearly were oppressing them out in the public. Everybody could see it. This doesn't, like, the U.S. wouldn't match any historical racist, essentially, systems or countries, because it's a lot more open, it's a lot more honest, and you would see it 1,000 times more.
Well, yeah, you could even you saw it in, for example, like South Africa with apartheid, when they still had apartheid. That was an example of actual systemic racism that was happening. Although now they actually have it again, just against whites.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. That is systemic racism. The United States is not that.
Yeah, like for example, a lot of people try to say the United States has apartheid. That's completely retarded, and actually, many people who were in apartheid countries had said that is an insult to people who had lived in apartheid.
Actually, I got a genuine question. Do all people who make this point just have severe dementia because they kind of forgot that a few years ago your country had a technically black person?
Yeah,
the
kind of.
black first lady. Well, the really funny thing is, America has more
First
black
lady?
successful
Who said
people
she
than they
was a
do in
lady?
any other place in the world.
What'd you say that? Z? Not Z. Putza.
Demon?
Well, America has more successful black people, than any other place in the world. Like God's sakes, not only being the president, there's more actors, there's more businessmen. It is clearly one of the best places to be if you're a black person here in America. The job opportunities.
Yeah, but even that is not good enough for them. Citation, Jussie Smollett.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. But so that we have more successful black people here in the United States, we probably have more successful black people here in the United States than we do in all of Africa.
Yeah. Well, and another kind of point. So the reason why I kind of think that it's partially this sort of neo-racial identitarianism coming from the left, especially amongst the black communities. Back in the 90s, you kind of see a lot of stuff that's going on now, not only with the race riots, but there was a shooting in New York. It was a white guy who defended himself against 4 unarmed blacks. And essentially the same things that you're seeing now, you could see that. And not only that, you had a lot of extremists sort of like Malcolm X, and a lot of this sort of sprang and slowly grew up in a very leftist, sympathetic place to them until they had grown a lot more. And the black community, it's kind of in a harsh area, and they're taking advantage of this, and they're just simply pointing the finger to white people or just anyone that they can to avoid facing their own problems. You know, the left is, I think, greatly responsible for this. Another sort of point is that there was a place in history where a lot of people didn't have a father. They said the N-word a lot, and they were racial identitarians. It was called the Deep South back in the 1800s.
And it was run by Democrats.
Yes.
The good old days.
Damn it, Z.
No, fuck you. Well, did I disagree to?
Oh.
All right, let's finish this video.
No.
Oh, do we
And
have
the situation
to...
has grown desperate.
What situation?
Yeah, for police.
Trying to distinguish between violent and nonviolent protests is not about the legitimacy of the action, but rather it's a way of diverting attention from the reason for the protest. Images of protesters burning police cars or breaking windows.
It would have been
play
better
the
if
fears
someone
of
was on their
lawlessness
necks.
Jeez.
I had to say it for authenticity's sake. I mean, I would like to consider myself a historian. If you're gonna do it, at least do it right.
Been central to U.S. politics since the uprisings in the 1960s helped give rise to so-called law and order or tough-on-crime politicians who parlayed white fear of black violence into their own political power.
When the nation with the greatest tradition of the rule of law is plagued by unprecedented lawlessness.
Right now, I think the nation needs law and order.
But whether a protest is deemed peaceful or violent is beside the point. Property destruction
No.
and tactics. The same as
No.
It's beside the point. Man, don't look over here. Don't look over here.
It's
I
okay
mean,
to interfere
this
with
is-
other people's rights when yours are.
I mean,
So-
this is on par with Kent State, in my opinion. Because, if you don't know, as a foreigner, we learned about Kent State as being a peaceful protest, which then the
Where people
military
died.
shot at. It was only until, I think last month, that I looked it up and found out, oh, actually, Kent State had a series of protests, a building was burned to the ground, and there was an arsonist group in the area trying to set more fires, who the university was trying to help, if I understood it correctly. And the day that the military shot at, it was, if I remember correctly, it was just 29 soldiers out of 73 in total who shot. And this was after some time that the students were throwing stuff at the police. So they were at the soldiers. So, long story short, the hippies deserved it.
Nonviolent direct action that are meant to produce specific results. Nonviolent direct action can be about raising awareness for an issue, or it can be deliberate law breaking in order to put pressure on lawmakers.
Deliberate
So
kind of
stealing
to change
Nikes,
unjust
stealing
laws.
Nikes
Or it
is
can be a way to draw out violence from the opposition, providing images that can potentially shame the oppressor. Looting
So
and
you
poverty
mean
destruction,
manipulating the story?
I
Yeah, there isn't a single.
just
There
just
isn't a
like
single.
just like the reason as to why soldiers during Vietnam hated a wartime journalist.
Look at this smug, self-satisfied bitch.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
of course,
violent protests.
I
And
Sends a
almost
different
said
kind of
something I
message.
shouldn't
If
say.
democracy only
But,
functions by the
yeah,
consent of the
motherfucker, I'm
governed,
calling
we
you
can
a
think of these
bitch.
militant actions as the withdrawal of consent.
Shall
We
not
let
be
the government
silent.
know that a portion of its citizens no longer believe in the
I can't
legitimacy of
breathe.
its power, and they are willing to fight to wrest that power from their grasp.
Now, in fairness,
Demands
most
have been
people
put on
do
protest.
have lack of faith in the government. I think most people distrust the government in general. However, there's kind of this really strange perception that people are having with these riots, and I've seen people especially try to justify it on Reddit. Most of these people who are getting hurt are minorities who are already getting murdered or having their business destroyed, and they're trying to claim that they're fighting fascism. If you fought fascism like this, let's say 1939, he goes and invades Poland, and you guys fucking loot your own buildings, mostly kill and hurt minorities. How the hell is that going to stop anything? And B, these people are not fascists. They're normal ass people. And C, acting like a violent fucking mongrel isn't a way that's going to achieve anything. If anything, this is going to justify a much larger state.
And one of the dumbest arguments I hear is like, oh, but the dumping the tea like during the colonies, and number one, all they did was dump the tea. They didn't burn the ships. No one got killed. No one even got injured.
And these weren't people who, this wasn't private property. This was the British government, the British Empire, not your average fucking person.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was a very specific action, and they didn't have to hurt their own people to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess another thing with these statues that are getting torn down, another argument that they're trying to make is some colonists tore down a statue of, let's see, the King of George. Well, A, this wasn't a democracy, so they couldn't peacefully tear down the statue. And B, this was the British Empire. These weren't people like, who are they tearing down? Teddy Roosevelt, Martin Luther King, Abe Lincoln, a defenseless deer statue.
It was an elk.
Honestly, I've seen people go down with the argument of trying to tear down Mount Rushmore. And I have a slightly controversial opinion on that. I say, no, just wait. I say, let them try. Because the number of people who have injured themselves just with the
Statues.
with the moderately sized human statue. Could you imagine the body count that Mount Rushmore will obtain?
That's awful.
But yeah, like the other thing
But
is
you're
like they
still
tried.
laughing.
They've also been trying to take down. I'm not sure if they have or have not yet, but I know they've been trying to take down also a statue that was paid for by freed slaves.
Oh, the Abe Lincoln statue.
Yeah, and they tried to say that was
Statues
racist.
of abolitionists, Frederick Douglass, like all kinds of people. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
These people don't know history, and they don't know anything about how the government works or statistics. And also, my biggest pet peeve is these people. I can understand; they're complete fucking morons. But my biggest problem is the libertarians who are defending this movement, saying, "Oh, most of it is peaceful."
Yes.
You fucking idiots! There are riots. How many right-wing people have gone out and started riots. These, even if we say 70% or 90% of it is peaceful. Let's just say 90% of these are peaceful protests.
This is on par with Europe, except in the direct opposite, because a lot of Europeans are in strong support of everyone getting rid of their guns because we're retarded that way. But because they always cite this one mass shooter in Norway who injured some, he has a body count in the tens. I forgot how much. And it's like,
Wasn't that
yes.
guy?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I think I know who you're talking about.
Either way, it's still just one guy in 2011 and 2012, and you keep fucking ignoring everything else. Like, what I absolutely hate over here in Germany, at least from my own classroom, is that my classmates legitimately believe that right-wing extremism is the most dangerous thing in Europe. They have completely ignored Islamic terrorism. They've completely ignored all of the stupid Antifa zone signs right outside of the classroom door.
Like freaking Hamburg had a huge problem with Antifa a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they still have it.
Back to my whole point about the Libertarian Party and libertarians in general. My whole thing is that they're defending this movement. Now, they don't defend the riots. They've said that specifically. However, the movement is toxic in general because there are a huge percentage of people who are defending the riots, and there's also the fact that the riots are happening. Why would you defend a movement, even if the majority of it is peaceful? Why would you defend a movement that has been having a lot of riots when right-wing protesters who have protested against the government and everything, they have never been rioters, never sought out killing people, and those Charlottesville people don't count because they're not right-wing. But any right-wing liberty group has never done anything like these, any of these kinds of protesters or rioters.
I wouldn't say never.
Those, silly logic, reasons, and facts. Like, yeah.
There have been very few cases in which anything that a liberty group has done. I think the only cases in which someone on the right has killed anyone is because they were killing people killing doctors in abortion clinics because they were committing abortions.
Maybe not in recent times. There haven't been a lot of.
That was the 80s, if I remember.
I was going to say, it was either the 80s or 90s. Like,
yeah, that's the only example I can think of. In which,
well, if you go back a bit longer, so when the Civil War was happening, and it was in particularly in New York, and this was in particularly led by the Irish, they revolted against the government, and then they in particularly went after blacks and murdered a lot of them. And there were many race riots in the South leading up to the 1950s and 60s, but recently, in the last 50 years, we really haven't seen any right-wing riots like that. They do generally come from left-winging areas now.
Oh,
so
wow.
It did happen. A lot of them did happen, but just a while ago. Who's dominating the platform in riots or leftists?
There is no right wing in Europe. I don't think there is a right-wing political party in Europe.
Well, yeah, there is. It's the Islamics.
No, in Germany we have the AfD.
Well, I mean, even
Alternative for Deutschland.
Even in the UK, like you know.
Oh, in the UK there is no party.
But conservatives in the UK would be our left wing.
Yeah, no. In the UK there is no left or right wing, except for the Green,
left.
Libertarian, and whatchamacallit.
It's just left and further left.
Labour Party. No, those are the only truly left-wing parties. All the other parties, conservative and all of the other smaller parties, they're not left or right-wing. If they're just selfish, they have no goals except for themselves. Like they legitimately don't give a shit about what policies they vote into it, just as long as they get paid by the end of the day.
And yes, Metal, Islam is authoritarian. Him saying it was right wing was a joke.
Yeah. No, a lot of the Islamic world is generally conservative. They are aligned with.
They're like 1960s conservative, yeah.
No, even further
they're
than that.
Feudalistic conservative. like 1800s conservative.
Yeah.
Well, and
Well,
I was
they
going to say,
they
in Sweden,
basically-
they do have a right-wing party that's actually kind of like AFD grown, the Sweden Democrats. And there is like an actual like white supremacist party, but they're so small, they're not really significant.
What is it, like 100 people?
Probably.
Like hell, if it's only 100 people in America, I can imagine how small it is over there.
Yeah, just a couple guys in their mother's basement.
People keep like screeching about the KKK. I'm like, have you ever met anyone in the KKK in your entire life? Because I haven't.
I'm pretty sure there hasn't been an Antifa member that's actually met a fascist.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, where are these people at? This boogeyman
you know what's
that you
funny?
keep
They
talking
never
about.
actually like go after like actual KKK meetings. That's funny.
Because they don't happen.
Well, they do happen, except they're a
They
little
happen
bit more
somewhere,
fun.
I'm sure. I'm sure somewhere.
No, like,
somebody's mother's
some time ago, I've seen footage of what happened in the last decade at a clans meeting, and genuinely, it just looks like a decent barbecue. Let's just say that. like it's unbelievably racist, but they got a pig barbecuing right over there, and it looks fucking delicious.
It's a racist barbecue. Got it.
Yeah, that's about it. They don't burn the cross anymore. It's too obvious. Of
Anyways.
course, they do it only.
Meanwhile, Democrats make up their own hate crimes. Like one happened in Oregon.
That's all they do.
Yeah, so there's a really interesting fact about the Democratic Party in general. A lot of their voting base, they're right wing. And I'll say this because a lot of the Hispanic population, 90% of them are deeply Catholic. A lot of this Islamic community is far worse than your traditional Catholic. A lot of blacks actually have very conservative views towards traditional marriage, race policies. And a lot of essentially foreigners and people from third world, they're very right wing. A matter of fact.
Yeah, and considering Antifa's attacked a couple Catholic churches, that might turn more Latinos to vote Trump.
Yeah, go ahead.
My Cuban neighbor is the most patriotic man you'll ever see.
Well, he has to be unless he wants to be sent back to Cuba. And considering you're in Florida, that's a pretty easy thing to do.
He's legal. He's not illegal.
Since when has that stopped someone?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Shut up.
Like I said, you're in Florida. It's relatively
finish the video.
All right, let's finish this video.
Get this shit over with.
Yeah.
And protesters to prove themselves worthy of the attention of the powerful. By declaring yourself peaceful, that you're not trying to disrupt or damage anything, in which everyone has to say, we are peaceful protesters. Something shifted with the protest that erupted in Minneapolis, where a police station was set on fire. It's as if the protesters said, fuck that, we're done with that. Because no one has responded in any meaningful way to respectability.
Fuck this civilization thing. That's what...
Two things is like why people have not responded to your protest. You're either doing it wrong, because a lot of times, a lot of the protests that they have done, where they were peaceful, they've done it wrong, because you're doing it on fucking freeways.
Alright, let it go.
That's the dumbest thing imaginable.
And they already arrested the officers. There was no point to keep on looting, and I mean, not that there was in the first place.
But anyways, the other thing is that the other way they often do it wrong is you do it in a wrong situation. Like you're doing it with what's his name, Colin Kaepernick, for example, his little protest, which was a bad way to do it because that would be considered disrespectful. So you don't get people to actually listen to you. You get people hating you, whether you agree with him or not. That was a bad way to protest in general. So like most of the times they've had peaceful protests, you guys did it in a shitty way.
Yeah. Well, protesting on a freeway and expecting that to solve your problems is like protesting right in front of a volcano. What is it going to achieve?
Well, not
Well,
even
we
just,
used to do that with a virgin. Didn't work out for the virgin.
and not even the fact that it's dangerous, but the fact that people don't like that. I've seen many people who hated when protesters online social media, what they saying, people don't like it when they're protesting on freeways. No one likes it when there's a protest on a freeway because that blocks fucking traffic. People have to get to work. They have to do things and stuff. They don't like that. There's a proper way to protest. And the other thing is like how you're talking, saying white privilege when you have nothing to back that up, no hard evidence, saying well, all white people are racist, that doesn't help your cause. Also, the fact that you're just saying Black Lives Matter and how you've acted, your rhetoric and everything doesn't help. Regardless whether you truly just mean just to say that you want Black lives to matter as much as white lives or any other life, your rhetoric is not very good. How you do it, if you wanted people to more look at your group, is to say, as I've said in one video I recently published, is saying all lives matter. Ironically, the thing that they hate. That statement would work much better for you, bringing more people together under. If you believe police brutality is a problem towards black people, you should bring it as saying it is a problem for everyone. You get more people to support you, more likely to support you, and it wouldn't be as no one would be able to use it in a racist way, which Black Lives Matter has had a huge problem with many racists using the whole movement, whether you agree with it or not, the movement in a very bad way. For example, the Black Lives Matter organization, which is extraordinarily racist and extraordinarily communist. So, if you wanted to use your movement against police brutality, you should unite everyone under something that's more uniting. You want more diversity in a really ironic sense in your slogan.
Therein lies the whole problem. It's not about diversity. It's not about inclusion. It's not even about Black lives. It's about like a bunch of anarcho-communists who don't seem to get what the hell that means, and just they're racists, they're sexist, they're violent, I mean, I'm just gonna just say this: they're assholes, and it's just
And you hate them.
And one of the biggest
hate them.
One of the biggest stories that just, destroys all this is the protesters who got hit in Seattle by a black man who was just doing a Grubhub or whatever, and his bail is set at $1.2 million for accidentally hitting people, and GoFundMe took down the fundraiser for his bail.
Oh,
how was that Black Lives Matter?
Originally, they called him a white supremacist.
Yes, the African immigrant is a white supremacist.
Yeah,
holy crap!
No, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before that, Outlaw, you might want to cite the second last comment from the live comments.
Oh, you mean second to last?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else think it's ironic that the video you guys are reviewing censors the cuss words while you guys cuss like sailors during the review?
Well, it's quite simple, you see. Well, it's quite simple, you see. We like freedom of speech here. Now stick for next week's stream where we debate whether it is ethical to cook and eat Mormons and if it's legal.
Hey, I'm the only ex-Mormon here. We won't win this fight. It's not going to go the way you think, to quote Luke Skywalker.
You still have your magic underwear? Okay, Mitt Romney.
All right.
Hey, we managed to survive without being a minority support, all right?
Oh, yeah, when everybody was trying to kill you and you had to flee to Utah? All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish this video.
Oh
The
God,
people who
please.
can't fathom looting as a political act see everything through the lens of materialism, where there's a desire for things. So people must be using this as an opportunity to have more things. The idea of the poor and disenfranchised is unworthy, as inherently selfish and only after luxury. That's being projected onto these folks through the lens of the privileged and wealthy.
That's because they're stealing from people who aren't wealthy to start with a lot of times.
Yeah, like, oh, it's materialism. Well, sorry if I can't feed my family now that my business isn't destroyed. And no, insurance won't cover it in most cases.
No, they
Well,
just
I
want
don't
bread.
think the insurance predicted this, so give them some credit.
Because they want that Chanel bread. Like, that shit's tasty.
Yeah, I just gotta have that flat screen TV from that mom and pop shop.
But it's, bread.
I mean, but it's not about the materialism while I steal all these luxury goods from Louis Vuitton.
No,
Yeah.
no. It's just about I need bread for my kids, man.
For my 18 kids, which I legally don't have custody of. Because I couldn't feed them bread.
Who feeds their kids a loaf of bread? You're a terrible parent.
The Great
Hey.
Depression.
Guys, my daddy's going to the store. We have a daddy?
We're all going to hell.
I have worse jokes, but I'm not gonna say them.
Oh, don't worry, I'm already in hell.
Okay, we're halfway there.
Oh, hell no.
That lens
Just
denies
hurry
looting
up
as an
and finish
anti-capitalist, anti-racist form of political action. Looting is saying, these places of commerce subject us to surveillance, to violence. This also has to do with the destruction of our community. Just think about the origin of the confrontation between George. The chiding of violent protesters is often done to black protesters to have more things. The idea of the poor and disenfranchised.
now you
is
skipped too far
unworthy,
back.
as in
Just
There?
skip to
Political
456.
looting is saying.
Okay, just a good
these places of
question.
commerce subject
Pause
us to
this.
surveillance.
So he's talking about looting. Did someone fucking loot the doors of this car? Like it's burned out. I mean, clearly the glasses are smashed in or they were melted, but where are the fucking doors? Did someone literally loot the goddamn doors of this car?
I see somebody also added some street art to it, so
No, but seriously, click to the next shot because it shows a better image of the car.
Violence. This also
There.
has to do with the destruction of our community. Just think about the
Someone
origin of the
fucking
confrontation
steal
between
the
George
door.
Floyd and the police. Floyd was
I
accused of
can't
passing
breathe.
a counterfeit bill. Looting is a response to the totality of surveillance and violence.
Wasn't
in
he
a
also
police
drunk
state.
driving?
chiding-
Well, he was on meth and what's that painkiller?
Fentanyl.
Yes, he had both of those in his system. So, well, I mean, the officer definitely should have gone to jail, but the other three, the one had been on the job 2 days, one had been on there 4 days. He was their supervisor. What the fuck were they supposed to do? I'm sorry, like I don't blame them. Him,
Violent
yeah, he
protests
should
is
have taken
often
his
done
knee
to
out the
black
man's neck.
protests, no matter the
There's a
actual
pretty
tenor.
diverse group
Martin Luther
too.
King Jr.
So,
is revered by white Americans today, but in his
Oh yeah, you got a few white people, you got one Asian, and you also got one half black guy.
yeah.
time, he was derided for inciting violence with his protests, though most of the violence came from the other side, be it police or everyday white supremacists resisting the change in laws and customs of the Jim Crow era. Calling a protest violent has little to do with whether or not the protesters themselves are actually violent, but with how branding them violent can turn mainstream sympathies away from their cause. Once we are debating whether or
Yeah,
not
but
people are
the
going
difference is that Martin Luther's cause got bigger.
Yeah.
And this whole
'Cause
video
he
is so
wasn't-
ironic because the mainstream media is downplaying the violence, especially in Portland right now. They are siding with Antifa over the
Yeah, what's
feds.
going on in Portland? Because
It's okay. So basically, the mayor and the governor are doing nothing to stop Antifa, and then when the Department of Homeland Security tries coming in to arrest people for felony charges, they're saying, "Oh, they're putting people at risk." Basically, they're They
The
agree
only
with
reason-
Antifa, and they're allowing it.
The only reason the federal, like DHS guys are there, is because they were trying to attack a federal building, which is not part of the state. That is federal land. So, ergo, they have jurisdiction to go in and, kick the shit out of these idiots. So, I mean,
And as Tim Pool was saying, it's almost like he's declaring civil war against the federal government, because he's basically saying you have no jurisdiction here, when by federal law they do.
Well, my other
they
problem
totally
is
have
that
jurisdiction. And that lawsuit that idiot AG filed, or whoever the
Yeah, Attorney
one
General.
the one in Oregon, that lawsuit's going to go nowhere because it's complete bullshit. And I'm sorry, like, all these people need to get removed from office, or you know what? Just pull all the troops out, let Portland burn to the ground. Fuck them.
Yeah, and so the head of the DHS, I forget his name, he went down there himself to look at the damage. They have so much evidence. There's no way that lawsuit is going to pass.
No.
Well, my other problem is that also it's not just the left-wing news media that's lying. It's also Libertarian Party and Libertarian news networks that are also lying about this.
Yeah.
Well, I
That's my biggest pet peeve, is that when libertarians say, "Oh, trust us, we're truth tellers," it's like, no, you goddamn lie, probably just as much as any other political group. Like,
and that's why
cut
I'm
the
voting Trump. I mean, for years I've considered myself a libertarian, but now I'm starting to question it.
I fancied myself.
At the end of
as
the
a
day,
right-
they support Black Lives Matter. They are supporting a lot of government regulation. So,
Yeah, I figured myself a right-wing libertarian, but now I'm just like, screw it. I guess I'm just right-wing.
Yeah, the
I
party's a
dropped the
joke now.
libertarian
And,
mark long ago.
Oh yeah, I don't call myself a libertarian. Although I would technically be classified as one, I don't call myself one because I despise the Libertarian Party.
yeah, at this point I'm just a Republican. Screw it.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
but there is sort of one problem I have with a lot of Republicans was this: they've been extremely black-pilled, and what they want to do is have Trump go in there guns blazing and just declare martial law on every state. That would, a guy who can't say grab him by the pussy in a 10-year-old conversation in private is just going to send the federal government everywhere and crack down on this shit. This won't look good for him. Like, people would be very sympathetic. They would use every single moment of this and paint him as an extreme dictator.
And they
Oh, they
all
already are, pretty much.
I know, but they would have a lot more to work with now.
True. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'm not saying
all
I'm
it
for
is.
that. I'm just saying that.
To be fair, I was more for in the suggestion that people with functional military equipment march into Seattle, because legally speaking, the mayor and Fox News acknowledge Chaz as being an actual place, so thus you can go to war with it and kill all of the stupid commies in there, and technically you didn't break any US law because you weren't on US soil.
I
It's
know,
all
but it would
underneath
be,
technicalities.
I
But I'd
know,
like
but
to
that
show,
technicality would lead to political suicide. So,
Yeah,
but
but I like
who
to
will
show the
support
opposite
you?
side of Portland. So I think it was in Tennessee, a group of protesters tried setting up their own Chaz, and day one, the governor said, "You're not getting away with this." And it never stayed. No one's talked about it since because they stopped it day one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there
try
was
that-
also one in
try that crap-
Nashville. Wasn't
Try
there?
that crap in Florida. See what happens. Florida man go crazy when you lose.
No,
Florida
not-
man will try to bring the Gators in.
I will
No,
run
the
into
Gators-
a crowd and throw a baby gator at somebody.
No, don't cause child abuse. They're too cute.
Oh
No gator abuse.
What you
Hey,
much rather do,
dude.
it's slightly more risky, is you gotta find a nest with a mother nearby and then run.
No, you throw the baby gator, and then Mama Gator, who's 14 feet long, comes out and goes, chomp, baby, chomp, 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 baby shark.
No,
And if
no,
it
no, no,
attacks-
not baby shark. It's a baby croc.
And if it attacks any
Grandma
protesters
croc.
or rioters, it's a white supremacist croc.
Crocs
Oh,
for
boy.
peace.
Wrestling gets fellow alligators.
Crocs of peace.
No, but as for the whole thing about declaring war on Chaz and going in there and essentially causing mass slaughter if you know how to aim a pistol, which isn't too hard to do.
But yeah,
No, I don't think it would be political suicide because who the fuck will support you? Because I don't think Trump would.
but yeah,
Well, you do have an extremely. A lot of our country does lean left, and a lot of unarmed people get slaughtered by the U.S. military. Yeah, it would look extremely bad. For
No.
people with-
I'm not saying for the military to do that. I'm saying for people who have military equipment. These are private citizens who got their own weapons and vehicles. Because the country is actually free.
One reason that would fail is they would actually have the police called on them. They would actually do their jobs.
Do
And
you
B-
remember? Do you remember how long it took to stop a meth-crazed individual who stole a tank?
Yeah, but most average people don't have abilities to the tank. The federal government does.
You do realize that you are in the U.S. You got a long list of privately owned and even rental tanks. That is not a joke.
Although
And
most people don't know
second
how
of
to
all-
pilot.
And
Yeah,
second
but
of
a lot
all,
of
no, you're missing the last portion. The biggest important thing is a tank is far easier to drive than a car.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes, I've
but a
driven.
lot of people who could afford a tank wouldn't go out and buy a tank because that would be very bad for business if they drove up the Chaz and killed everyone.
I
Yeah, that
know
was
guys
more-
that's a tank and a MiG-23.
I gotta buy a tank.
I'm honestly tempted now.
Well, most people
Actually,
can't
tanks are
afford
not
the
that
car-
bad price. I can suggest you a wonderful website. It will cost in shipping though, unfortunately. If I can find it, just give me a moment. Where is it? No. There Wait, is this it? No, that's a paper model website.
Paper bottle? What the fuck is a paper bottle?
Oh, it's a 3D model, but it's it's paper. You cut it out, you fold it all, blah 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 blah. They actually get quite
Origami?
expensive.
Well, yeah. Well, one point I want to make before my battery dies and I have to get out of here soon. Most of this shit is happening in far blue areas. These aren't happening in generally conservative or centrist places. Like I see it. So if they went over there and tried to do the same thing that they're doing in the city to some other places, like there was this video of a guy who had a pistol and he ordered 20 looters out of his store. And a lot of people would instantly fight back if they didn't go to largely left sympathetic areas. And so I don't think to be too harsh or too black-pilled on the situation, because this is happening to a place that is a very far away from most sane people, and they're kicking their own asses. All right, there is a civil war going on in this country, and it's generally the left versus the left. Most of the damage isn't happening in conservative places; it's happening in leftist areas. So,
Mm-hmm.
This
You
shit
know,
ain't happening around me.
yeah, I know it shouldn't be happening at all, but what
Yeah,
are you
it
gonna
should
do?
be, but-
Yeah. What are you
my
gonna do?
town?
It's a
Oh.
popular.
that
All right.
no.
So before we end the stream, I have one other thing to share. It's not a video.
Okay.
Oh no.
I hate you.
What,
It's like a
what is the...
catchphrase.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yes.
It's real.
Holy crap, it's blown up.
What?
It only had 3,000 when I first saw it.
What am I looking at?
So is that
You're looking
woman
at
the virgin?
Chad. The
The
police
living
officer
meme.
Chad.
Oh, God.
Chad
Who's the
exists.
That's a thing, I guess. Alright.
That's all I'm gonna get from you.
Oh, I found it. I found the website.
I found one
Motar
too.
Investments.
Moltar.
No,
Wasn't
Motar.
that some
Motar.
Motor.
No,
wasn't
no.
that a character from Adult Swim?
No. Motar, like the artillery piece.
Mortar?
Motor. Yeah, motor. There we go. I
It's a
am
little bit
tired.
different.
Well, there's also German, so you got a bit of an accent.
I mean, it's okay. English is so inconsistent in pronunciation.
Okay, but before y'all go, you remember that we mentioned earlier about, when it comes to nuclear reactor issues, it's mostly Russians.
Yes.
So here is the entire recorded list of reactor accidents on nuclear submarines from the entire world. Okay, these are all nuclear reactor incidents on nuclear submarines from every nation.
Let me guess. There's one American and there's a whole shitload of Russians.
I will read them. K8, 1960, suffered a loss of coolant accident, subsequent radiation release. K14, 1961, the reactor compartment was replaced due to unspecified breakdown of reactor protection systems. I'm not going to read all of these because these take too long. Anyways, K19, 1961, K11, 1965, K27, 1968, K140, 1968, K429, 1970, K116, 1970, K64, 1972, K222, 1980, K123, 1982, K431, 1985, K219, 1986, and K192, 1989.
Those are all Russian boats.
Yes, those were all reactor issues. The only
There was one American submarine that sank.
Yes, but that was due to accidental failure, not the reactor. It was a whole. The U.S. Navy
Like
was
everything
experimenting with a new dust filter system for the air vents inside the sub, and the issue caused.
I don't know. You'll have to fact check me on this, but wasn't it a Los Angeles class attack sub?
I need to find. So it was the USS Scorpion. 1968 was lost at sea. So I think this was it. Or wait, no. Okay, there's two. There's USS Treasure and USS Scorpion.
The Treasure is the one I was thinking about. I remember
Probably
the
because that's the
Thresher.
one.
I didn't hear about the Scorpion.
How do I find what make of submarine this was? Beam drop propulsion.
Just
Class
look up the
Treasure class submarine. It was the lead ship. Anyways. But yeah, so the US, you had a couple of sunk ships due to other things. The only anything to do with the reactor for a foreign navy nuclear submarine was the USS Nautilus, the very first nuclear submarine. And even then, there was no actual problem with the reactor. It was because when it was dry docked for usual maintenance, someone accidentally blew up one of the gasoline canisters for welding in the reactor area. No radiation leakage, the coolant wasn't damaged, just a couple of things were scraped. So that is the closest incident with a nuclear reactor on a US nuclear submarine compared to the Russians, which let's see what
those are all Soviet boats. Yeah.
Let's pick a random one. So the K140, the reactor was damaged following an uncontrolled automatic increase in power during shipyard work. Okay, K24 experienced reactor core damage to one of its liquid metal lead bismuth cooled VT1 reactors, resulting in 9 fatalities and 83 other injuries. What the fuck?
What is it, a T1000? It's liquid metal.
Scuttled in the Kara Sea in 1982.
All right, I think we'll end it here, the stream.
Okay, I'll just leave with a fun one over here from the Soviets. K429, 1970. An uncontrolled startup of the ship's reactor led to a fire and release of radioactivity. And all the hippies complain about the Americans.
All right, so any other final thoughts about all the videos we saw?
I regret coming to the stream every time.
That's
It's a little exhausting.
I hate
I got
all
4%.
those people.
Yeah. I have
Oh, I
4%
noticed
battery.
Who?
I wanted to say something real quick.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so especially Zed, I imagine you know this. You know a lot about the Austrian-Hungarian Empire.
Yes.
You know one problem it had, right? It was very large and diverse, filled with a bunch of
Yeah. Okay.
contradicting
Because
opinions.
because I was about to ask. That is a rhetorical question when it comes to problems in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire.
So
Which
the
one would
modern
it be?
left's
The
a lot
Balkan
like that.
states?
Yeah, the modern left's a lot like that. All it would take to really collapse them is if some of these minority groups just started voting in their own parties. If the Democrats lost 20% of the black vote, then they would likely never get elected again, at least for a while.
Kanye.
So essentially, if
Yes.
Black Lives Matter,
I am so
perform their
tired
own-
to the point that I could have sworn you just said the Democrats lost 20% of blacks,
And
but
in
in
my
a sense like
personal-
casualties.
I was gonna say, in my personal experience, I've heard a lot of black people say they want to vote Trump, so it could definitely rise to like 10 or 12% this election.
well,
I'm
it's not
waiting
only
for
that, but if the Islamic start to do it, if these democratic socialists start to do it, you're going to have a fraction bloated party that's going to die. And they
Yay.
can keep importing all these immigrants to go vote left, but the problem is they stay in generally left areas.
Oh,
They can add a few.
not to mention a lot of Antifa and Antifa sympathizers are
All
saying.
right, I
vote
got to get out of
green.
here. My phone's at 1%. See ya.
okay.
So, yeah. So yeah, the amount of riders that are voting Green Party might actually help Trump win, and especially with how Joe Jorgensen has been kind of pandering to the left, that's turned a lot of libertarians to vote Trump.
Or just
So-
not vote at all.
Yeah, so I'll be genuinely surprised if Trump doesn't win at this point. And especially
in my
when
opinion, at this point, when it comes to Trump, it's more of an expression than actually vote on policy at this point. Because let's face it, the longer Trump remains in office, the more these people are going to lose their brain cells because they've gone completely insane.
If the nominee is Biden, they lose. But I don't think it's going to be Biden.
yeah, and
I
that's
think they're
another
gonna
good
just
point.
install
Like
somebody else.
most people who vote Biden are voting him begrudgingly.
Yeah, there's no excitement. They're just like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of a similar
I'll vote
example
for the
was
demented old man.
a good example was like the 2012 election. A lot of Republicans didn't turn out because they saw Romney as Obama light, which he was.
Yeah, even I was just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It also didn't help his women's application comments because, oh boy, did we also hear that when I was in India.
Oh well, Romney's a piece of shit. Sorry.
Especially now.
That's why we have the term rhino.
Yeah.
Republican in name
Neo-
only.
Neocon.
It's just the
Neocon
same with
rhino.
Antifa. Anti-fascist in name only.
Yeah. All
right,
Actually, a bunch of little fascists. All
so
right.
I think-
end it.
So I think I'll end the stream here. Guess there's no other final thoughts. So my name is Rational. You've been watching RNN. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see y'all.